Okay, now we're going to talk about some topics that the FAA and Robinson Helicopter have decided that you need to hear before your first flight. Some of these topics are a little bit advanced, but it's good information to know at some point during your helicopter training. So the first thing we'll talk about is energy management and auto rotations. How does the helicopter fly and get back to the ground safely in the event of an engine failure? The first thing we're going to talk about is energy management and auto rotations. The helicopter's flying along at 500 feet, 70 knots forward airspeed when the engine quits. Maybe we ran out of gas. What kind of energy do we have to get us back onto the ground safely? We're not going to get any more energy out of the engine or the fuel tank, so we got to look at three sources of energy. One is our potential energy. If we're 500 feet above the ground in a helicopter that weighs 2,400 pounds, that's a fair amount more energy than if the helicopter were on the ground. The way to prove to yourself that potential energy is a real phenomenon is to take a can of soda and drop it on your foot. The loss in potential energy from 3 feet down to 0 will give you a good bruise on your foot, and imagine how much larger a bruise you'd have if you drop a 2,400 pound object from 500 feet. So there's a lot of potential energy in a heavy helicopter having been hoisted up high into the air by the rotor system. How about kinetic energy? Our forward airspeed's about 70 knots, 80 miles an hour. And what if we were to reduce that to 0? Could we recover a lot of energy? Absolutely. Imagine driving your car into a brick wall at 80 miles an hour. You'd reduce your speed from 80 miles an hour to 0, and that would be enough energy to crunch up the sheet metal quite a bit. There's one more source of energy in the helicopter that we can tap, and that is also kinetic energy, but we'll refer to it as blade inertia. The blades are fairly heavy and they're spinning fast at about 400 RPM, so that might be a useful source of energy to tap into. Okay, let's talk about an auto rotation. Okay, we're flying along 70 knots, 500 feet. Engine quits. Maybe we ran out of gas. So we lower the collective immediately, and that flattens the blades. The helicopter is going to start to sink, and the relative wind therefore isn't going to be like this anymore. It's going to be more coming from here. So by flattening the blade pitch, we're making the angle of attack between the blades and the relative wind roughly similar to what it is in normal cruising flight. As we lose potential energy, as the helicopter sinks, it has less and less potential energy. That energy goes somewhere, and one of the places it goes is into driving the blades. So we'll always have our airspeed all the way to the ground in an auto rotation as long as the collective has been lowered. Okay, well, we're sinking at 1,600 feet per minute, and we certainly don't want to hit the ground sinking that fast. If we've kept up our forward airspeed, starting at about 40 feet above the ground, we pull back on the cyclic and flare the helicopter, thus reducing our airspeed to 0. More interestingly, where did that airspeed reduction, all the kinetic energy that was in the airspeed, where did that airspeed energy go? It went into reducing our descent rate. We can reduce our descent rate from 1,600 feet per minute to 0 by reducing our airspeed. So now we're about 5 feet above the ground, but the tail's kind of low, and we're kind of stopped. We're not going forward anymore, and we're not going down. Gravity, unfortunately, will eventually pull us down. So we don't want to land on the tail. The insurance companies don't like that. So what we do is we push the cyclic forward. That levels the helicopter, and then as the helicopter sinks through about 3 feet, we pull up on the collective and pitch the blades up. That takes the blade inertia and uses it to cushion the fall of the helicopter. Notice that the blade inertia doesn't cushion the fall of the helicopter from 500 feet. It cushions the fall of the helicopter from 5 feet. So it's not a very large source of energy, and it's only important at the very end of an auto rotation. That's energy management in an auto rotation. Why does Robinson want you to hear about such an advanced topic at the very beginning of your helicopter training? I think it's because pilots have a tendency to slow down in an auto rotation as they get near the ground. And Robinson wants you to know that it's very important to keep up that 70 knots right until you're at treetop height, because it's that airspeed that enables you to arrest your vertical descent. So almost all helicopter training is teaching you to fight your natural tendencies. And one natural tendency that we all have is to pitch the nose up a little bit and slow down as we get to, say, 100 or 200 feet above the ground, and the things are beginning to look pretty big and moving fast. So, lower collective, use potential energy to drive the blades. At treetop height, about 40 feet above the ground, pull back on the cyclic to initiate a reduction in airspeed that'll stop the vertical descent. When you get to about 5 feet, you push the cyclic forward to level the skids, and then at about 3 feet, you pull up smoothly on the collective to use the blade inertia to cushion that final fall from about 5 feet. Plenty of people in real life situations have executed that auto rotation glide and smoothly flared and gotten the helicopter down with no damage whatsoever.